Hello, everyone. Greetings. Good evening. My name is Nika Cherrelles, and this is the It Cast, Real Talk on Sex. Tonight, we are talking about celebrating Blackness and weaponized privilege. And please visit our GoFundMe campaign to support the It Cast and all of the work that we do. All right. So in the booth tonight, we have our correspondent, Kim. Hello, Kim.
Hey, guys.
And we have our guest tonight, Tony Rogers, who is an educator and Black mindfulness coach. Before we begin our discussion, Tony, please tell us a bit about yourself, your personal and cultural background, and anything that you would like for our audience to know.
All right, hey everybody, how you doing? Thanks for inviting me here. My name is Tony Rogers. I am originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I was born in St. Louis, and I'm old enough to be born as Negro. I still have Negro on my birth certificate. That's a little tidbit. So that's how old I am, and that's how Missouri was back in the 1970s. I come from a very loving, amazing family. People who were sharecroppers, and part of my mom's family, they were some of the first Black inhabitants of the north side of Memphis. They actually built the first few homes that were there. They founded a school and a church with the same name, Valentine. So shout out to Memphis. And then my family moved to St. Louis. That's where I was born. And so I just come from some really good people. Not to say that anyone else does not. They're just very loving. I have 10 siblings. Two have passed on. I've been an educator I've worked in education since I was 19. So I've spent about 31 years in education. And I picked up mindfulness. Well, it didn't have a name actually when I picked it up. My grandmother was very keen on telling us just to be still and be quiet and let the Lord work with you and talk to you. And so we would just always sit still in our house because there were so many grandchildren that we would all have to find our own places and sit and be still. And I oftentimes would wake up and see everyone else playing in all kinds of games and having fun because I would nod off, but I would get so relaxed. And so when I left my family, I moved to California when I was a teen. I still practice that, being still and getting quiet. And I would say that that's a life skill that actually and literally saved my life so many times over. That's pretty much me. My dad is a Vietnam vet. And so I grew up with a person who experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. And my dad would reenact, it was not a reenactment. He would just have these flashbacks of experiences that he had in combat, and he would drink to like make it go away. So I grew up in a codependent relationship with my father with alcoholism. So we did a dance around that. And I am a lover of science. As a young person, I was a part of the NASA's Young Astronauts program when I was about 24 and a classroom teacher at the time. I had a little stint at Cape Canaveral Kennedy Space Center. I was there for this certification program for teachers in technology and science. And we were kind of like working out things with the internet back then. So that's pretty much about me. I was a teenage dad. So my lovely, amazing daughter was born when I was 17 years old. Excuse me. So I'm a young dad, young grandfather, and just a person who was in love with life. And I'm a lifelong learner. I know that as long as I have breath, there is hope. Where there is hope, there is life, and there is someone who is thriving, and I'm always going to learn. So that's me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that. That's in depth, and I love the tidbits about Negro on the birth certificate and meditation, like that.
That's Negro. It's me.
I'm shocked by the Negro on the birth certificate. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in Missouri.
And for the record, it popped back up on like, what was it, the 2016 or 2008 census as a way to identify. And I was like, no, not okay. Not okay. Let's keep that antiquated term antiquated.
Do you know, I filled out an application today and they were like, what is your race and ethnicity? And I was like, I choose not to disclose. I don't think we should.
Yeah, I don't think it's as relevant as do you breathe, eat, sleep, and think.
Right? Mm-hmm. We're all humans.
Yeah.
Or do you want this job? I mean, main point.
There we go.
I can tell you, like, I want the job. That's all you need to know.
Yes. So this episode was coming together around the conversation around celebrating Blackness. We are at the end of February, Black History Month, honoring and acknowledging it and knowing that these are conversations that need to happen all year round. And as we were unpacking that, the conversation around weaponized privilege came up so strong that I'm like, we have to talk about that quite a bit more. So Tony, can you talk to us about what weaponized privilege is and what that has looked like in your life?
Yeah, sure. Weaponized privilege looks like for example, on a job. For me, for example, I was a principal of a high school, principal of a middle school, been in education for many, many years. There is a particular way of being on, I would say that's considered to be professional when you're angry and upset. But it also mirrors a specific cultural way of being for specific people. So you can be rude and disrespectful and even mean, and it will be accepted if it fits in the dominant cultural identity. And honestly, which is typically of white females in the workforce that I've been in education. For example, for me, I didn't grow up with that because I grew up differently, and it doesn't make that way of being wrong, but it shouldn't invalidate or rule out mine. So there are times when I make facial expressions and people will cry, or there are times when I use a particular tone or a particular volume that makes other people upset. And I've often had conversations um, around how I've upset other people. In one particular case in particular, someone who was a direct report to me, and it's not like I'm all into hierarchical structures, I'm not, but that was a law of the land. I was principal of a school. And the person was speaking to me so disrespectfully, it was beyond unprofessional. So I had to stop the conversation and say, hey, listen, the way that you're speaking to me, if I witnessed anyone speaking to you in that way, I would write the person up immediately and send them home. So I gave an example of what I would do if I saw someone speaking to her in that way. And she continued. And I said, okay, now at this point, I'm going to have to tell you, you need to stop. And I don't even know why I need to tell you this because you're beyond unprofessional. And I've already given you an example of what this behavior looks like. So let's just start over, but stop the behavior. But she was so upset from that. She stormed out, she cried. Um, and later on, I had to go under a review because even though other people in my organization, even my boss and other people said, yes, it's disrespectful. We've witnessed it multiple times. We've had conversations with her about the way that she engages with you and the way that she talks to you. And we've told her that it's unacceptable. And she said she was going to improve. Even though everyone else was aware of that, I went under a review. And so I said, before I even went under this evaluation, I said, I just want to be clear that everyone's hearing what I'm hearing. We all agree that that behavior is egregious and it shouldn't be allowed. And yet I'm being evaluated based on her request. And they're like, yeah, well, she just can't take it as much as she gives it. But the fact is I wasn't giving anything. I was just being a mirror and pointing out her
Yeah,
behavior.
I mean,
And so
Tony, do you mind if I ask you? I mean, I don't like to identify people as black or white, but in this conversation, it is imperative to the conversation and our learning. So I'm assuming this girl was white.
was a white identifying person. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
And so, go ahead, Nika.
No, go ahead, finish.
And I was just sharing with you, like in situations that I had, like I had an accident once where the police came and I was the person who called for help and support, but they went and talked to the white person that was there first because they were the authority. And they, even when I mentioned to them, hey, I'm the person that called you, they said, okay, yes, let me speak to her first. And then after we talk to her, we'll talk to you. And for me, I already knew what that was about. Like they would listen to me, but whatever information she gave them first, That's what they wanted to hear. Although I identified as the caller, they knew it was a male person that called. And so those are just ways, um, and of course there are many more situations and stories. And what I do with them is I don't, oh, go ahead.
I just want to double back to the conversation around the woman in the workplace and talk for a bit about white fragility and white entitlement, and like how those two things are correlated. So I'm really hearing that this person played the fragility card. Oh, I'm so scared. Oh, I feel unsafe. And that on its own is a level of entitlement that people don't get, that they're actually throwing that weight around.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. So part of what she said was that she didn't feel safe in the conversation. She walked out, she was in tears, and she left her phone on my desk. And mind you, she slammed the door closed. So I was just sitting there, just kind of like, doing my mindfulness, counting down from, 1,000 to one, and counting by halves, making it go real slow. And I looked over and I saw her phone and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just leave it there. She storms back in, doesn't knock on the door, doesn't say anything, storms back in, snatches the phone and walked out. And so for me, when I say I don't feel safe, I'm not going to be around anyone. I will send someone on my behalf. If I don't feel safe around a person, I'm not walking near you. If I see you in the hallway, I'm definitely like avert my direction and going somewhere else. I'm not going to interact with you. And I was just, I was irritated because that was thrown out. And I know that's why I went under the evaluation, although everyone else was in agreement with me about what happened. And they saw it as a problem.
Mhm.
And
Well,
honestly,
Tony, can I ask you how you felt in that moment? Like, explain to the other races, the white people, like how you feel in that moment.
I mean, I was enraged, but I didn't express that to anyone.
Yeah.
I was pissed, I was upset, I was frustrated, I was angry, I felt marginalized, disrespected, belittled, of little value. And so I mean, people don't understand the psychological reorientation one has to do in these situations. And here it is, I am being reprimanded for someone that everyone has agreed has an issue with me. Like everyone was in agreement with that. And everyone wanted something to be done about that. And so I had to breathe through that. And I had to, every day that I came into work, I had to literally, I mean, there were some days I would just sit in my car and not want to get out of it. And I had to work through that experience. And I had to also work through still being loving and kind to her and everyone else that was involved. And I mean, there were other things and situation that happened. And mind you, I'm running the entire school still, even though this situation happened. So I had to, practice mindfulness. I was standing in the face of opposition and I was standing in the face of adversity. But all those other experiences that I went through in my life actually prepped me for a situation like that. And so I still had to shine. I still had to work in a way to promote what she was doing and encourage her to do her best at that job. And so I recognized through her behavior that she definitely wasn't afraid or felt unsafe around me because she was always around me, either seeking support or working together. So I had to look past that because I'm like, this is a very petty situation and I'm still being kind to you. And
Yeah.
not like I condoned it. And it wasn't like, I just realized I had more things to do with at school. I didn't plan on retiring there. I didn't plan on like letting my hair down there because I don't have any in the first place. I just planned on doing the best I could do and moving on.
We
And
don't care. We don't care about your hair. We care about your soul.
yeah. And I had to, my grandmother told me this thing when I was really young. Keep your heart clean and keep your heart pure.
Mhm.
No one will ever break your heart. No one would ever hurt your heart because it is yours and yours alone. And you are responsible for it. Now, this is someone who picked cotton as a girl. Like I said, part of her family developed the north side of Memphis. She went to St. Louis and didn't have I think my grandmother had a 5th grade education, but graduated nursing school in St. Louis and became a nurse. And so I learned from her how to be human and how to make these things actually reduce them down to nothing, because it wasn't a reflection of who I am. It was a reflection of that person. It's like the saying that, like, when you squeeze an orange, you only get orange juice. Like, when people are in tight situations, you squeeze them and their true essence comes out. And so for the woman that I work with, it's not an indictment. I just saw what she was like in a tight situation. And I
Yeah.
saw how she got down and how she wanted to characterize me, but she wasn't even really talking about me. She was
No,
talking about
those are
her.
her own inequities. Those are her, like, has nothing to do with you.
No,
Absolutely.
absolutely
No.
not.
But my thing as a white person, like, if I was treated like that, you know, once a week, once a month, I would be a raging bitch. Like, I would be arrested, I would be in fights. So I don't know how y'all like, just, I like what you said, Tony, with the mindfulness. Like, I'm a metaphysical practitioner and I do the mindfulness, but not everybody knows that. And it wears down on your soul and your spirit and your psyche and just your mental state, everything.
Oh yeah.
So how can we, like, how can we get above this? Like,
I just wanna point out for a quick second, talking about like being a raging bitch and being angry and upset about these things. Like, the idea of calling Black people angry because we deal with this level of oppression everywhere is deeply offensive. And so, like, talking about ways to deal with and level the playing field, it really starts with checking your privilege. Like, you have to check your privilege at the door to actually be able to be in these conversations equitably. And she was not checking, she was using her privilege. She knew she wasn't scared, she knew she wasn't afraid, and it allowed her to be in that space of being an authority, because now she's putting on this whole, like, oh, I've got concerns that aren't even necessarily real or justifiable. Yeah, do you have anything you wanted to put on that, Tony?
Yeah, it's just a matter of people being aware. Like, for example, like, showing anger. Like, I showed frustration, but for me, I mean, that's Black male anger is criminalized. We die. There's no narrative about the angry Black man. We will be dead. And so, it's, I had to also model for my students. And what's so interesting is, like, so many other people recognized what was happening, and like I said, I was not a victim, but I, I knew that every day that I went to that job, it was a choice. First of all, it was choice. So if I was going there and they were engaging in that behavior, I was also choosing to go there. And so since I made a choice to go there, I just worked out the plan that I was going to operate. When you have shown me who you are, that's your script. It's like playing a video game,
Mhm.
like playing Zelda or something. I know who you are. I know what your extra gold coins are. I know how to get tokens from over here. Like, I just know who you are and I recognize you as that, and I don't want to change you. So I just navigated through the system. I made sure that, and all of this stuff was actually suable, but I'm not even that kind of person. I don't even want your money.
Mhm.
I don't. I don't want it. And I just kept telling myself every day that I went there, I'm doing a good job. I'm motivating and inspiring hundreds of students every day, and the teachers there and other people, and including the people that were disrespectful to me. They were still being inspired. If I feel like in a position of leadership, if people don't really like what you're doing, they're not going to tell you, they're going to tell other people, you know, and like we would be in meetings at times and I would, create a mentor program for the students, and they would thank everyone who was on the panel for creating a mentor program, and then say, and whoever else was a part of it. Well, actually, there's nobody else who was a part of it. because it was me that developed it. But I would just sit there and I'd be like, yeah, I mean, that happened. And it was like little
Me and all my
snide
alter egos.
things,
Shout
you know,
out
and
to you, Tony.
yeah, I didn't want to get acknowledged for creating those things because I was told as a baby that I was sent here from the ancestors sent me here. They wanted me to be here, and they said that I said yes and came and I was born. That's the type of family that I came from. And they said, as long as you live, you only answer to the name you want people to call you. Don't answer to anything else. And know that you were made by love for love and you were made in love.
Mm,
And
that's
I
that's
love
what's going
that.
to
I love
encapsulate me.
that.
yes.
And then eventually I left.
Yeah. So let's deepen this conversation around authority. So you started talking about the moment with calling the cops and like talking to the white woman because she's the authority. You made that in our pre-conversation, you shared about that. So talk about like what that looks like.
Okay, so basically the way it is like whiteness is an authority. When I say whiteness, that doesn't only just mean white people, it just means people who carry that type of culture. But most of the time it is white people. And so I had a student teacher who was a white male. We were the same age, and me and that dude became the best of friends. So people would now I mean, you worked with me when I was at Anna Yates, so I was this pretty, well-known, like dynamic science teacher, 6th through 8th grade. So he came to work with me. He was a student teacher. And there were times when people came into the room and they would say, I'm looking for the science teacher, Mr. Rogers. I would be at the board writing the agenda and whatever else that we were doing. He would be sitting down, taking notes or just like watching. And
Oh my
I
God.
would say, so they would walk to him and say, hi, I'm looking for Mr. Rogers. And he'd often say, oh, that's him at the board. And they're like, oh, wait, I'm confused. I'm looking for the science teacher. And he would say, well, it's Mr. Rogers. I'm the student teacher. That's him there. And then they would address him whatever their questions were. And so after a while, I pointed out to him, I was like, do you notice how everyone comes in and talks to you and only answers you? And they ask you questions. And he's like, yeah, I haven't really witnessed it. He was like, I didn't know. So I pointed it out to him because he wasn't aware. And then the next time it happened and he was like, holy shit. It's so blatantly disrespectful. How do you put up with this? And then there was a camera crew that came in for the National Science Teachers Association, and I was to be interviewed. And the principal came in with me, and some donor was there with the principal, and then whatever, and who's all important ass people. And it was my student teacher and myself standing side by side. The principal introduced me as Mr. Rogers, and she introduced my student teacher, and they addressed their questions to him. And he said, you're not here for me. If you're here for the dynamic person, please don't ask me. It is him. Why don't you speak to him? Because he is the expert. And so once he became aware, like we just started like double teaming that, and like we would talk about it all the time. And so that's what it looks like. Is like the white person honestly is the authority, and not even in that situation. Like it's also been like in situations like where people tell me what Black people need to do, as if we haven't been thinking about what to do for centuries. And
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
you you know, and sometimes people be like, oh, we guys just need to focus on education. We're probably the only people who go to school because that's our way out. We know like this is it. Like we're not just in them classrooms because we want to go to college. We're in those classrooms because there is no other option at times for some of us. I'll say for the way it was for me. And so whiteness and that the way that is culturally done is always seen as the authority. So
Well, I mean, Tony, what advice would you give to white people? Like, what can we do differently? What can we do to help? What can we do as a positive energy to just, so Nika and I have talked about, I tell her there's like 3 types of white people. There's like the super racist, ignorant, people, they're hateful. Then there's the people that have grown up in the white bubble and they live in the white suburbs, went to white schools. They're sheltered from it. And then there's another group of white people who were mindful and were woke and we're trying to help. So if you have any advice for the white people, I would love to hear it, because I'm just at a loss right now. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's like the way that, like, for me as a teacher, the way that I learned about my students was actually by listening to them and telling me, like, and allowing them the space to advocate for what they wanted. And I would say, like, just by having conversations and being genuinely interested in what someone else has to say. And sometimes the shares that I know that I may have may be painful to hear, but I lived it. You know what I mean? Like, although it's painful to hear, it was very painful to live. And it's important to be able to listen and to think about, in what ways do I carry whiteness? And that's because whiteness is a culture, and everyone is in that whiteness bubble in this country. We're all inside of it. And so, how do we recognize that? And it's not a technical challenge, it's an adaptive challenge. How do I adjust myself by reflecting and questioning myself and just moving beyond the situation, you know? And so I would say that's the main thing, is by checking in, listening, studying, researching, speaking out to, like, for me, I'm not going to be able to reach out. I mean, I grew up in Missouri. I'm not going to be able to reach out to a person who's heavily involved in a white supremacist organization, but another white person can. And so that's what we do. We have this allyship, and is I don't think sometimes that white people can learn from me as a recipient of racism. They will learn from other white people who are allies and who are witnesses and who are there to support. Because in the end, this is one planet that is this is a spinning globe in space. I mean, if we really look at where we are, we're on a spinning globe in space in the universe. I belong here. Everyone else belong. We're like magnets attached to it. We can't get off of it. A few of us can in spaceships. So we are here together, breathing the same air in the same space. I'm not made any differently than anyone else. And so, although we have these conversations about the hue of my skin and the social and psychological impact of that, we belong. Just looking at that, I think we belong here together.
Yeah.
This world is ours. We there is a difference. So, like, I'm not into the colorblind thing, because if you don't see this beautiful brown, and if I don't see who you are and all of your hues and colors and tones, that's like me as a man saying I don't see gender. I just see everybody as a human. That means I'm coming from a male perspective,
Right. Because you don't have
and
to.
that's not, yeah. And so I can't luxuriate in that. And so if we just really take the time to really get involved and love each other and be of support and care about one another. And I won't say care about me like you care about family, because some people don't care about family. I don't want nobody to care about me like you care about your family. Care about me like you care about, something that you really love and give your attention to, you know. Um, because I'm not going nowhere. I've been here for a while.
Yeah. I love what you said about and this fits into the conversations I do around allyship. You're like, a white supremacist is not going to listen to someone who looks like me. They might for a limited period of time, but I don't know that it's going to sink in or make a difference. And that may not necessarily be a safe conversation for me to be in. But for those of us who are willing to come together and like cross the bridge and learn something, take it back to your people, take it back to the conversations that, like, where I don't get a seat at the table, and actually question why I don't get a seat at the table, or why other people of color don't get a seat, or women don't get a seat, or whatever it is. Anywhere where people are being kept out, those are the conversations to be having. And I think that's really powerful what you shared there. It's huge.
It was really good. Really good.
Yeah. One of the other questions that I wanted to touch on tonight is, how do you celebrate Blackness under the weapon of privilege? Like being Black, being here, like what is celebrating Blackness look like?
Celebrating Blackness for me is waking up in the morning and saying, I love you. Hello, beautiful. You are amazing. Just like that alone, because it doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't have to be a recognition of somebody who was the first to do this. I don't even believe in also saying the first things, because like when we say the first Black thing, we forget about all of Africa and the Black people in Latin America and the Black people that are in Asia and the Black people in Europe. So we like, Tony Rogers was the first teacher who worked at NASA. It was a whole bunch of Gugab and Nigerians that were there before me, and I'm part Nigerian too. So I actually fit that. And so like, it's like I don't like the first because they almost say like you're not supposed to be doing this thing. And yes, I am supposed to be doing this thing. And there's so many inventions and amazing things that we give things to. Like, like I was telling you the other day, for me, celebrating Blackness, everybody celebrates Blackness every single day around the entire globe. When they turn on the light switch, you're celebrating Lewis Latimer. If that light didn't explode because it had like a fabric filament and they have that carbon filament that makes that light work for a long time, that is the invention of Lewis Latimer. So you celebrating Blackness. When you stop at that red light, you're celebrating Garrett Morgan. And so those are the ways that we celebrate Blackness on a daily basis. But for me personally, it's just about waking up, being loving and accepting and embracing myself. I would say for others who are not Black, it's about recognizing, why don't you? Like whatever we're celebrating, there's always some kind of cultural identity that's implied. And, celebrating Blackness is not a vacation destination. It's not just because of February, although February means, to purify or to cleanse. And I love that, that we have this month where we acknowledge this and other months for other people, but it's something that needs to be incorporated on a daily basis for all of us, because there's so many contributions that Black people have made. We all celebrate Blackness in terms of the mundane celebrations of acknowledging the hardships of Black people and acknowledging whatever goes wrong with Black people. And I told you the other day, like when I'm walking down the street in my neighborhood that I've been in for I don't know how many decades, and people are just moving in here and run from me, they're celebrating what they think a Black person is. They're celebrating what they think I am. Because celebration just means something that's done frequently, and it's something that does to honor. So they're honoring a legacy, even though it's negative. And so how do we shift that around and implant positivity? I will pose that question on other people. What are you going to do about it? Because it can't come from me. Because when I wake up and just love myself, and I know that I'm alive and I've been blessed to live again after all the adversity that I've experienced in my life, that's my celebration, just by breathing. And I know that may be really simple for some people, but if you haven't died and come back, if you have not taken your last breath and come back, I have. So anytime that I breathe, that's celebrating this life that I have. And I think that's another thing. Like when I was experiencing all these racism on the jobs, I died. And I came back. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's where you at. I see where you are in your life. Okay, you on that kind of level? I'm not. And not to say that I'm superior, but I know what it's like to not have this life. I do, and I'll never not say that, and I'll never ignore that. And so being thankful, like affirming who I am, that's how I celebrate myself. You are enough.
Yes.
And I used to say, I am enough. I love you as you are, right? Snotty nose, booger in your eyes, whatever it is, I love you just like that.
That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh.
Early in the morning, like you're
Love,
enough.
love, love, love,
I
love,
promise.
love.
So I would post to other people, how do you do that? Because no one needs to tell you how to love,
Mhm.
you know? How do
Well,
you love and open your heart?
Tony, here's my problem as a white person. So I call it a superiority inferiority complex. And it doesn't matter if it's the color of your skin, the kind of car you drive, your financial status, whatever. If this person thinks they're above you because of whatever, you know, the color of your skin, your financial status, whatever, they're judging you, they're looking down on you, they're criticizing you, and this is what you've had to endure in your life, and Nika too, and with work and everything. So how do we, I mean, we're all spiritual beings, having a human experience.
Mhm.
So I love the diversity. I love the different colors. I love the different personalities. That's how I learn and grow. So how, I mean, what can we say to the white folks that is encouraging to say, you know, so my thing is with, as a metaphysical practitioner, it's a holistic way of counseling and it's a soul process, and it's a deprogramming. It doesn't matter if it's from the government, from your parents, from your peers, from your school, from like whatever, the news, it doesn't matter. So this is what I'm trying to do. And I don't know how to reach the white folks, because it's so beyond ignorant to me, and I don't understand it. It baffles me.
Yeah, there's this saying that, and I'm gonna butcher it probably, but you are like there's only one of us here, and you are me cleverly disguised as you. And so any position of superiority is actually inferiority. When
Yes.
I feel that someone is beneath me, or if someone is in need, I don't judge them and tell them to work harder. I actually support and I help. So anytime that there's a human condition and a group of us are pulling ourselves up and saying, no, I'll never give this to you because you just want everything that I have, when I recognize that everything on this earth was made for us, all of us equally. And so I don't get into the illusion of who I am. And so I know that that comes from a place of inferiority. And so I would say if people can address that selfishness, hoarding, greed, in all of the holy books around the world and non-holy books around the world, we are told not to engage in that because it's a sticky, unhealthy attachment. So if I'm hoarding my wealth, saying I won't help other people, you have a broken leg, and I'm saying I'm sitting on a pot of gold and I won't help you with insurance, or I won't help you with that, and I have it. There's something wrong with me. There is something intrinsically wrong with a society like that. And I would say that's the best way that I can look at it, because I don't know what it's like, because I've always since I was really young, wanted to reach out and help others. Like when I entered kindergarten, we called it desegregation in Missouri. Everybody else called it integration. You see how we still held on to the word segregation. So when we were desegregating our schools when I was younger, I was told at 5 years old when I went to kinder, there were 3 of us in that classroom. And I was told, and I know those other kids were told, because we were told that together, you are making room for someone else. And if you mess up, somebody else is not going to be allowed. So think about it. You cannot fight. You cannot, although I did fight, but you cannot fight. You can't do all these other things because you're going to mess up for those that come behind you. At 5, I went to school with that obligation and that level of
Tony,
duty.
you and I have a lot in common, because I was born in 67. And when I moved to New Orleans, they were still doing integration. So I was a minority in my school. So it was kind of like flip the script. So I have a little bit of knowledge in that area. And so I feel you. Like I just, I don't know, Nika, chime in.
I have to point out though, this is something that's so critically beautiful. The space in which you just created, Tony, around having to be perfect. Like you couldn't mess up being one of 3 people in an all-white school. But I guarantee, Kim, that you didn't have that burden on your back.
Oh, I got in fights all the time. I got
Right, but yeah.
suspended. Yeah. And it was dismissed. White privilege, white privilege. Yeah.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So one of the last things, and I just wanted you to point this out, Kim, while we're on air here, is around like white people celebrating and honoring Blackness. And like what's actually occurring right now. I know that I have some people who popped up in my life who are like, how can we do this in a way that's not going to be offensive? And for the record, like fried chicken and watermelon parties are not a way to celebrate Blackness. That's rude and offensive. Don't do it. And what is the gap? Like,
make it taste good.
I love fried chicken and watermelon. You come to my house and you're gonna get it.
I'm vegan now. I'm vegan, so I have fried vegetables.
Well, I'll have fried vegetables and watermelon for you. Look at Nika. I mean, Nika and I had this conversation earlier, and I said, Nika, I just have to let you know about 3/4 of the white population does not celebrate like Black History Month. And, a lot of them don't think you should have a month, which, my goal is that I want to have like a level, like playing field, because it's been so uneven for so long. And I think we need to have that. But what I do is I go with my mixed friends and we go to the MLK parades. We couldn't do that this year. And I support Black-owned businesses, especially the restaurants, because I love the food. And I study and I study and I study and I communicate with my friends, just to learn and grow. And I don't know what else to do. If y'all can give me some pointers, it would be greatly appreciated.
I think it's great. Education is key. Like it's absolutely key. And
yeah.
Go ahead, Tony.
I always tell to people, if you don't love a Black person, it's hard for you to engage in the work. And so like, who is in your circle of life? Honestly, it doesn't mean like, tokenized friendship, but like, I think it's important for people, I would say just a question, like, why don't I celebrate Blackness? And what does that mean? And I think people need to research, and it's customizable for each person. Because Blackness isn't just one thing. Like my Blackness is different from Nika's, and it's even different from, my siblings. There's like some continuity in Blackness, but there's not one way of being Black.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So we are at time. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up the show. But that's a powerful note to end on. So thank you both for being here this evening, and thank you to our listening audience. I do want to say right now we have our GoFundMe page up right now under Support the ItCast. Please go support the work, support the continuation of these conversations and all the work that we do. You can find more about us on Patreon as Nika Cherrelles and at nikacherrelles.com. That's NIKACHERRELLES.com. Thank you so much for being with us today, and good night, everybody.
Mwah, positive energy. Namaste. Mwah.